Good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to allow a few moments for participants to join before we begin. Now, I think our numbers have steadied. You're all very welcome to today's webinar titled Behind the Hi-Vis, What You Don't See, brought to you by the Construction Professional Skillnet. My name is Laura and I am the Network Manager for the Skillnet. There will be an opportunity to address all your questions at the end of the presentation, so please utilise the question and answers function at the bottom of your screen. It's Q&A, and we will endeavour to respond. On behalf of the Construction Professional Skillnet, we're delighted to welcome Louise Dennison O'Shaughnessy, Director of Mental Health and Wellness at EHS International and founder of the Dennison Training Academy. Louise is a leading mental health educator known for her practical, empathetic approach. She works with professionals, especially managers and HR teams, to build confidence and skills in supporting mental health at work. Her academy, known for impactful, tailored programs, was acquired by EHS International in 2024, where she now leads mental health program development across Ireland. Her qualifications include a degree in business management, managing human and social capital, advanced mental health instruction, nutrition, workplace learning, suicide prevention, gambling addiction, and a diploma in training and development. She also sits on the board of Invisible Traffic, an educational anti-human trafficking charity. The webinar is held over 60 minutes, allowing for 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. Your cameras and mics will be turned off for the duration of the webinar. So without further ado, I will now hand you over to the safe hands of Louise to start.
Thanks a million, Laura. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. Okay, we'll start. So, behind the Hi-Vis, what you don't see. We're going to look today at some of the things that we struggle with mentally, and it's when we say shedding the light on the unseen challenges in the construction industry, we have to think about all the things going on in people's lives, not just what we see on a daily basis. So, introduction slide here. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves, by Viktor Frankl. So again, that's looking at our thinking. So the visible side of construction, everything that we see and you see every day in your roles is great. Everyone knows what it is and knows what goes on. But it's what you don't see we're here to talk about today. So we're going to be talking about mental illness, financial stress, starting with financial, the mental load. So everything that we have to do and think about in our lives and what keeps us up at night. The chronic busyness of day-to-day life is a real struggle for a lot of people in current day lives, especially those with families and extra responsibilities. Addictions. So you've got huge numbers of addictions. There's some of the more common ones, your alcohol and drug addictions. But we also are going to look at some of the hidden addictions. Okay, screen. Bear with me there, just 1 second. Okay, sorry, my screen's just having a moment. Okay, hidden addictions. The top 3 hidden addictions in Ireland today are online gambling, online shopping, actually, gambling, and pornography. And they are causing huge problems on marriages, relationships, financial stress, etc., which leads on to obviously relationship problems. Okay, so why we're going to look at some of the employer realities, why culture matters. Why are we looking at culture now more than ever before? Some of the information I'm about to show you here is from a very recent report from Inclusio it was in the CIF conference last week. Okay, so disengagement costs the Irish construction sector between 300 and 450 million per year. Absenteeism and poor mental health costs the Irish construction sector up to 500 million a year. And it costs up to 9 months of a salary to replace every worker who leaves. So when I work with a lot of employers and they kind of are like, well, why do we need to invest in this? And this is some of the major reasons why in the construction industry. So we're going to look at some of the newer challenges to well-being. So there are lots, but these are some of the main ones. Difficulties detaching from work and screens. I'm sure a lot of you will agree with me here today that there's a new addiction, and it's addiction to our screens. They reckon we're going to look back on this time like we now look back on smoking when it comes to screens and phones. There is the mild dopamine release every time we lift our phone, and when we see somebody likes a post, somebody comments, we see something that we like, and it is addictive. Being always on. So that feeling of being on high alert all the time is exhausting. We were not designed as human beings to be always on. Being always on means we're on high alert, and that means essentially we're in our stress response, and that means our hearts are pumping harder. We're hyper aware of everything around us. We have a fear of loneliness. We have a fear of financial stress on the home place. We've got a fear of breakdown of relationships, fear of illness, fear of everything. But that fear drives people to be on high alert and feeling always on. And our bodies were not designed to be always on, and it has a negative impact if we don't manage it correctly. Fear of unemployment. So again, a lot of industries like the construction industry, there's a general fear, when contracts finish, jobs are over, what's next, what the future lies, that can cause people to always be on and stressing as well. The housing crisis, I'm sure quite a lot of you here today are either in the situation or know someone in the situation who is struggling to buy a house. Rental properties are through the roof cost-wise. It puts huge stress on people. People are traveling really long distances to get to jobs, nowadays more than ever before. And actually, a new study I was reading there recently, there was a high level of people in the construction industry taking cocaine to keep them awake on the long distances they're traveling to jobs around the country. So again, major problems. Cost of living, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. Trying to manage and navigate all the costs in day-to-day life and live and what we're all earning. It's a huge stressor for well-being. Simultaneously, workplaces, organizations are under increasing pressure to maximize productivity and reduce costs, and most importantly, meet deadlines as well. So there's pressures on both sides of the fence. So the effects of poor mental health on an individual themselves. So when someone is struggling, they'll often feel like, they're losing focus. They're not focusing on what they want to. They feel useless. They don't feel like they have a purpose. What you might notice is they will step back from some of their social relationships, interactions with their colleagues, and maybe go on breaks at different times, maybe not go on breaks at all, maybe just not be chatty on break times, and it can cause breakdown of relationships, with their line manager, with their colleagues, etc. So physical is possibly caused by harmful coping mechanisms such as overeating, abuse of substances, and lack of self-care. So again, you have to remember when people are really, really struggling, sometimes people will turn to some of the more harmful coping mechanisms. Now, moderation is a huge thing with substances. Some of the longer courses that I teach, we look at, the harmful coping mechanisms and alcohol abuse. And I think I know I'm personally guilty to having a gin and tonic at the end of a hard day. Like it's the reward mindset, but as long as it's moderation. The effect on others. So depending on the awareness of mental health issues, those around them may be impacted they might think their colleagues are lazy. You see, if people are not sharing, which they're entitled to not share, that they're struggling, colleagues might think they're lazy. So they might think, well, what's going on there? They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Why do I always get extra work? Their workload might be greater, their colleagues, which can cause, stress on relationships. So their workload, that's fine. Fear for the individual's safety and health. I actually just put up a post there last night about this, about if you are concerned about someone's health, can you contact their next of kin? It's a question that comes up an awful lot. And a lot of companies now are having next of kin and a contact person when somebody starts to work with them. And what that means is they would prefer the contact person contacted if there's a situation arises that maybe they don't want like an elderly parent contacted, or if, like, say, for example, that someone's struggling with their mental health, and they're maybe more comfortable with their contact person being contacted. And when, I suppose the post also was about when you can contact them, when it's suitable to contact them. Emotional and financial pressure on families. So again, if you have someone struggling with their mental health, like, the public system in this country is very, it's oversubscribed, it's underfunded, the pressure is real and huge. I recently got my daughter assessed for ADHD, and when I tried to get her publicly assessed, and I got a letter to say she wouldn't be put on the waiting list, and I rang them and I said, why? And they were like, is she suicidal? I was like, no. They were like, that's why she doesn't meet the criteria then to go on the list. So yeah, the system is so oversubscribed, and it's just seriously underfunded. So there's where the cost comes in if you're going private. Increased personal stress. A lot of people, when people are struggling with their mental health, want to help but don't know how. And it's very stressful watching someone you care about or love, or a colleague, struggling and not knowing what to do, or not knowing what to say, or having those tough conversations. A feeling of an inability to help. So I know with family members, it can be really, really difficult. You know, you love them and you see them struggling, and we naturally want to solve the problem, especially males, believe it or not. This is I was reading a paper on this recently, and as human beings, and the way our minds are designed, we naturally want to solve problems. And in doing so, when somebody comes to us with a problem, we try to give them a solution. But sometimes somebody just wants you to listen. They don't necessarily want, a great piece of advice I was given there not so long ago was, when somebody comes to you to confide in you, you ask them, is this a situation where you want me to listen? Or is this a situation where you want me to give you advice? And this works, by the way, for partners, colleagues. I've teenage girls. Trust me, it works for those. They usually just want me to listen, I might add. Okay, so impact of poor mental health on organisations in Ireland. So the cost of the Irish economy, 11 billion. 1 in 4 employees took mental health leave in the past year. 29% say work negatively affects their mental health. Did you know, guys, that your relationship with your line manager can impact your mental health as much or more so than your partner? So if your relationship with your line manager isn't good, look after your mental health. 50% report jobs are mentally demanding or stressful. Rising absenteeism and presenteeism, harming productivity in companies. So if people are turning up, they might be turning up, but they may not be doing anything that they're supposed to be doing. Only 20% of firms have a dedicated mental health budget. 1 in 3 employees link work issues to mental health problems. So increased costs for covering staff absence. So it's huge. It's huge in organisations. And possible missed deadlines or orders due to lack of staff. So it'll be deadlines with the construction industry. Okay, so hopefully this works. This very, very short video.
Check this out, this could be the most important video you see today. I want you to imagine that this rice represents the population of the world. The brown rice represents those people who will never experience a mental health problem. And the wild rice represents the 1 in 4 of us who will at some point in our lifetime experience a mental health problem. Let's just mix that up. Now, when you have a mental health problem, your mind convinces you that you are the only one. But let's just take a pinch. That represents your family. This one's your friends and some work colleagues. It's a natural part of being human. So whether you're with your family, your friends, or your colleagues, the likelihood is a few of those people at some point in their lives are also going to struggle with their mental health. So even if you're not struggling, the chances are you're going to brush shoulders with someone who is. So be kind. Like this, share it, and follow for more.
Okay. Bear with me there 1 second. Okay, stress. I like this image because it's quite apt. Okay, so how stress affects our body. It's really important to know when I do a lot of talks, and I ask a lot of people in groups, hands up who's feeling stressed, or hands up who's been stressed in the last week. It's really important to understand stress, because the impact stress can have on your body is huge. Stress can be responsible for up to 90% of all physical and mental illnesses. If you think about it logically, guys, when we're stressed, our heart beats harder and faster. If we're stressed all the time, our heart is beating harder and faster all the time. So what that means logically, if you have a pump that is working at maximum capacity all of the time, the reality is at some point that pump is going to malfunction or fail. So you are eventually going to have some heart-related condition if you're really, really stressed all the time. So my dad had his first heart attack at 36, and talk about a stress head. I do think he's part of the reason why I do what I do. But understanding your stress and understanding what happens for you in your body when you get stressed. So like my stomach would act up, I would have cramping and bloating and all that sort of thing when I'm stressed. Some people get headaches, some people get neck pain, back pain. Some people with extreme stress can have vomiting and diarrhea. So what that is when the body is all the non-essential systems shut down when we're in our stress response, and that includes our digestive system. So the body is trying to rid the stomach of everything that needs energy to break down. So it's trying to get rid of it quickly. So it floods the stomach with a huge amount of enzymes, which are quite acidic, and that's what causes the cramps and the bloating. Physical symptoms of stress, as you can see, I'm not going to go through them all there, but I'm sure you can all relate to at least one of them there. Some people are just exhausted. Have you ever, every time you've asked someone, I'm sure you can all think of someone that you've asked, how are you? And they go, tired, I'm wrecked. Every single time you talk to them, every single time. So that can be mental health issues, that can be complete stress. So some people just feel exhausted. Being irritable and behaving angrily, even with loved ones, is very, very common, especially with males when they're stressed or depressed, actually. So practical tips on recognizing early signs of stress. So irritability, short-tempered. Anxiety or low mood, increased worry or feelings of sadness. So withdrawing, social interactions or with colleagues or your own personal lives, withdrawing from them in general. So what you would have done when you were in good form versus what you do now, it's not comparison to your colleagues, because everyone's different. Work performance, increased mistakes. If your head is busy, you're going to make more mistakes. So if you have too much going on in your head, you're quite likely to make more mistakes at work. Can lead to missing deadlines, losing focus. Cognitive symptoms. So forgetfulness. I know I have this unbelievably. Negative thinking. Sometimes people catastrophize. Everything is the worst situation. This is going to be awful. You say it's a nice day. Oh, there's a cloud in the sky. Negative Nancy's, Debbie Downers. We all know some of them. Sleep changes. So having trouble staying asleep or falling asleep. Excessive sleep, sleeping more than usual, can be an escape. So just keep an eye out for some of those signs. So I love this. This is from a lecture I was at last year. The best question to ask yourself in a moment of stress or conflict: I may be right, but is my response serving me? So even if you're right, remember back to the first slide, the introduction slide, when you're in a position to no longer change the situation around you, you're forced to change yourself. That was Nelson Mandela's principle, and Viktor Frankl when he was in concentration camps. I think he was in 4 concentration camps overall. And he knew that there was nothing he could do about where he was, and there was nothing he could do about his situation. But he also knew that nobody could take away his thoughts. And the same with Nelson Mandela, which is why he had quite a sunny disposition in all those years on Robben Island. So I may be right, but is my response serving me? Because if you're just getting angry and frustrated at people doing the same stuff continually, it's you that's suffering with it. It's not them, because if they're not willing to change and you can't make them, it's you that it impacts. So the stress bucket. So this is just like an analogy image where you look at all the things that are happening and going on in your life. And then if you don't do things to relieve stress, you suppress, 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 suppress. And instead of starting off the day at a 3 or 4 out of 10, you're starting off the day at a 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10. And it takes one thing to send you over the edge. And some of you might be able to relate to this, or in the past even. Somebody said to me one time, you can tell the mental health of an area by how the level of road rage in the area. And I used to live in Cork, and I live now up in Kildare. And I noticed that people are definitely more stressed in Kildare than they were in Cork. The road rage is quite significantly higher here, and I only notice it because I live there. So even watch yourself in the car, are you reacting more than normal? All the things at the bottom are things that you do for your stress levels. That can be sitting outside. That can be reading a book. That can be talking to someone you enjoy. That can be listening to music. Eating well. If you put crap into your body, expect to feel like crap. I tell that to my teenage daughters all the time. They're sitting looking at me with spots and going, oh, my skin, I need this, I need that. I'm like, no, you don't. You need to stop eating crap. Because if you put crap into your body, you will feel like crap. So stress and your health, it shrinks your brain. Chronic stress can reduce the size of the brain, particularly in areas responsible for memory and emotional regulation. Hair loss. Severe stress can trigger a condition called telogen effluvium, and it causes excessive hair shedding. I think my husband must have been very stressed because he's almost bald now. Anyway, weakened immune system. Stress increases cortisol levels, which can suppress immune function and make you much more susceptible to infections. So you can get sick more often. Heart strain we spoke about. Digestive issues we spoke about, because remember, your body wants to shut down your non-essential systems. Your digestive system is a non-essential system. So it's going to get rid of whatever food is in the stomach as fast as possible. How does it do that? In extreme cases, you'll vomit or have diarrhea. And in more moderate situations, you will flood your stomach with the enzymes used to break down your food. And those enzymes are quite acidic. And if you continue this pattern, you will end up with an ulcer. And that, if anyone has ever had an ulcer, you'll know how painful that is. Weight fluctuations. Some people gain weight due to stress-induced cravings for high fat, high sugar. Others lose it. Premature aging. Lots of good news here, guys. Chronic stress shortens a thing called telomeres, the protective caps on our chromosomes, which can speed up aging. Muscle tension and pain. If you're stressed, you're holding yourself. You're holding yourself a lot. Your body, watch your shoulders, your neck, etc. can lead to chronic muscle tightness, tension headaches, and back pain even. Sleep we spoke about already, and hormonal imbalances, with reproductive hormones potentially causing irregular menstrual cycles for women and reduced libido or fertility issues for both men and women. So if you're very stressed and you're having fertility issues, you need to look at your stress. So workplace stressors in the construction industry, some of the stats. So 44% of employers reported that general work-related stress negatively impacted workers' mental health. Unrealistic work goals, that's a huge one in a lot of different industries at the moment. And I'm familiar with, this comes up in nearly all different types of courses in different industries, unrealistic work goals. Sales, a lot of the big kind of sales platforms of kind of multinationals, some of the tech industry that's trying to sell their programs and platforms, that you want to see the pressure some of those salespeople are under. A group I was with recently, we're talking about it. Long working hours. So are your working hours, longer than they need to be? 22% identified lengthy working hours as a contributing factor. Workplace culture, 16% reported a macho work culture where employees felt uncomfortable seeking help. So mental health prevalence in the construction industry. Suicidal ideation. It's just like thinking about suicide. A study of 1,585 male construction workers in Ireland found that 22% had experienced suicidal thoughts at some point in their lives. And suicide attempts, approximately 6% of these people reported having attempted suicide. Okay, stigma. So it's really important that we look at ways to reduce stigma, because if we don't, we're still going to be talking about the same subject in 10, 20 years. The stigma is huge with mental health, mental illness. I had to change the name of a national program that was a public funded, partially funded program that I was running to wellness, and remove the word mental, because there's so much stigma with the word mental. Okay, and promotes inclusion in schools, workplaces, and communities by reducing stigma. More compassionate society. How can we reduce poor mental health stigma? We can educate and raise awareness, challenge myths with facts. So if we're not sure about something, check it out. Some of those movies that, you know, the media's have to play in creating a lot of fear with certain mental illnesses. So like, you know, schizophrenia and psychosis, most of the time the only victims are the individuals themselves that are suffering from it. Mental illness is the only illness in the entire world where the people that suffer from it claim that the stigma is worse than the illness itself. Using respectful language, so avoid labels and stereotypes. Have normal conversations, you know, about mental health. You don't have to get into the deepest, darkest stuff, but just have normal conversations, even about supports and what's available. Listen without judgment. So we all judge, we're human, but keep the judgment in your head. You just don't have to verbalize your judgment, and that means it's not influencing the surrounding individuals that are hearing it. So promote inclusion, so support equality in workplaces, that's fine. And stopping judgment. I'm telling you, it's the one thing that is huge, that in education, stopping judgment. You might think it in your head, but you don't need to say it out loud. So what does mentally healthy look like? Calm and steady. You know, everybody's moods are up and down a little bit. Fit, fed, and rested. So what's fit for you doesn't have to be comparing to someone who runs marathons. Rested, are you getting enough sleep? There are 7 different types of rest. So just so that you're aware, sleep is not the only type of rest. Breaks from screens, out in nature, stretching, quiet rooms, you know, just look into it. In control physically, mentally, and emotionally. So not flying off the handle at people, or not upset all the time, or not picking around with someone. Performing well, behaving ethically and morally, socially active. So how many people here meet someone from a social perspective once a week or once every 2 weeks? When was the last time you met someone just from a social reason? Sense of humor, this is one of my favorite ones. Do you ask yourself, do you have someone in your life that makes you laugh till you nearly cry? And if you don't, my strong advice would be start to look up you know, comedians, podcasters that you really enjoy, and start listening to them. We underestimate the impact of laughter. We're so serious nowadays. I think being an adult is quite a serious role, and we forget sometimes that it's important to laugh. Relaxing and recreating, that can look different for everybody on here today. So relaxing for one person can be sitting in a book, relaxing for another person can be running, swimming, another person could be doing art, or just out in the community. Whatever works for you, because it's different for everyone. Confident in self and others. So mentally unhealthy, excessive anxiety, angry outbursts. When something interferes with you performing your daily routine, you need to look at it, whether it's physical or mental. So if something is impacting you performing your daily routine, you need to look into it. So there's lots there, significant change of behavior, indications of suicidal thoughts or intentions, and symptoms that get worse over time. So some of the habits of happy people. There's an 82-year-old study, one of the oldest studies in the world, done in Harvard University, and they look at the healthiest, happiest, oldest people in the world, and they're trying to find common threads. These groups are dotted all over the world, and they're trying to look for things that connect them. And they first of all thought it was like the economic state of the country, some of the wealthier countries. That wasn't it. Then they thought, was it, countries that were close to the equator, sunshine and light? That wasn't it. Then it was, were they wealthy backgrounds or access to healthcare? And all of these things were not it. The one thing that happy people, the oldest, healthiest, happy people have in common across the entire globe is positive relationships. Ask yourself how many positive relationships you have in your life. Ask yourself how many negative relationships you have in your life. Start to look at the negative relationships. If they're people you can step back from them. Sometimes people say, this is my wife or my husband or my kids or whatever, or my father or my mother. Put boundaries in. Put boundaries in. I'm not actually willing to have that conversation. We've had it and I don't want to talk about it. Start to put boundaries in and protect yourself. So a common challenge, managers often feel stuck between business pressures and supporting well-being, or they don't feel equipped to have well-being conversations. Provide managers with training and practical tools to embed well-being into their leadership approach. So prioritize and include well-being as part of the corporate strategy, and that filters down into mandatory well-being key performance indicators for every colleague and line manager. And we'll look at that more in a minute. So this is a question that comes up an awful lot, how to get buy-in, senior leadership buy-in when it comes to investing in well-being in the workplace. So we mentioned the KPIs, so to get buy-in, usually my strong advice would be find a senior manager that you can get buy-in from and that believes in it. And it's usually someone that's either struggled themselves or have a family member struggling, and they're the person that you need to be your champion in amongst the senior leadership team. Starting every meeting with a health, safety and wellbeing minute. And like you can get a wellbeing committee together, and titles, they can put together titles for every week of a thing that, like, you can say something like it's national spine day, I think is the 16th of October, World Spine Day, not national, World Spine Day. So things like, guys, if anyone's looking for manual handling training, or, we're promoting that within the company, and, sign just something that's your wellbeing covered. Like it's not a big job. It's just thinking about it and planning it. So some of the wellbeing key performance indicators for managers, the number of, when we don't have metrics, sometimes wellbeing is considered fluffy. When we don't have metrics, I can understand why it's considered fluffy, but we need to be able to measure things. So look at the percentage of your team members who have had at least one well-being check in the last quarter. Role modeling, track your own participation in well-being initiatives. If you're not turning up for well-being initiatives in your organization, I can be rest assured the people on your teams and below will not be turning up either. Why? Because if you don't see it as important, like, I can promise you they don't see it as important. Team meeting inclusion rate. Percentage of team meetings where wellbeing topics are discussed briefly. That can be reminding them what's on the EAP, the Employee Assistance Programme. That does not need to get into all about feelings and emotions. It can just be reminding them what's available. Communication reach. Percentage of staff reporting that they know what wellbeing supports are available. So again, look at your wellbeing supports, make a list of what your wellbeing supports are, and figure out a plan on what way they're going to be communicated. And every week, maybe cover one for your wellbeing minute. Guys, just so you know, this is available to you all. All you have to do is download the app or contact HR. Every organization is different. So the workload balance index, so percentage of employees who agree workload is manageable, and you get this from engagement surveys. Then you get an idea of where people are at. Manager training completion, percentage of managers trained in mental health first aid. All people that lead teams should have should be doing some form of mental health first aid, or there's mental health first aid for manager courses available as well. How to implement the right wellbeing measures for your employees. So ask your people. Use pulse surveys or quick check-ins to understand what employees truly want and need. Every organisation is a little bit different. Sometimes it's healthier food in the canteen. I know, I appreciate your construction, so you're on sites and whatever. Ask your employees what they need. You won't be able to provide most of it. You might be able to provide some of it. Find out the time it right. Find out not just what they want, but when it matters to them most. So sometimes, like making sure if bonuses are paid, that they're paid at Christmas time, which I'm sure a lot of companies do it anyway. And making sure that people are able to take their annual leave, even if there's deadlines, so it's planning and job design. Assess and align, balance their requests with what's realistically possible. I won't go through them all because we'll be here all day. So close the loop. You asked, we listened, we delivered. And the result of this is employees feel heard, valued, and psychologically safe. So ways to increase and maintain wellness in the workplace. Set up a wellness committee. Employee surveys. Have health screenings. Look at the data on absenteeism. Look at your turnover. Look at your productivity level in your organisation. Study your exit interview insights. If you have people that you really never want to leave in your organisation, sit down with them and ask them what will cause them to leave. So understand your people. So how can employers improve mental well-being at work? You involve staff in change. Do your staff surveys, but do something about them with the feedback. Because if you don't do anything about, if you don't listen and with the feedback that you get from the surveys and do something and acknowledge it, they won't fill them out. Improve levels of communication. This comes up time and time again. People feel like they're not being communicated properly with. The HSE stress management standards are on their website. Wellness committee we've covered. If an employee is worried about their mental health at work, what do they have a responsibility to do? They do have a responsibility to inform their employer. Because you have to remember, if they do not feel safe to do that, they will not do that. If the culture isn't strong enough for them to feel like they can go to their line manager and explain they're struggling with their mental health, they're not going to do it. So support in a mental health crisis. So potential signs to look out for if somebody has a mental health condition. Lack of care over their physical appearance and personal hygiene. Struggling to focus or concentrate at work. Becoming unproductive at work. Short-tempered and unexplained outbursts. Withdrawing from social interaction with colleagues. Looked at that. Starting smoking or increased levels of smoking, increased alcohol. How do we engage? Okay, so construction work can cause huge stress, anxiety, and fatigue due to the long hours and physical demands. Open discussions about mental health improve safety, reduce absence, and boost performance. Management should lead by example, provide clear policies, training, and access to support. I'm going to try that again. Management should lead by example, provide clear policies, training, and access to support such as EAPs. Site teams should look out for one another, reduce stigma, and promote a culture of openness and care. Regular check-ins, toolbox talks, the toolbox talks where your wellness minute can come in as well. Peer support systems like the buddy systems. Confidentiality and awareness of available resources are key to building trust and long-term well-being. I cannot emphasize that point enough, but I don't have enough time to go into it. So how to have the hard conversation, to find out how someone is, you ask them, look, it must be really hard dealing with, if they've someone who's ill, for example, how are you holding up? How are you getting on? That's a tough thing to handle. How can I be helpful? Can I do anything for you? If you're a line manager, you respond to any explicit requests for help, even if it's telling them you can't do it, but you can offer. You can't offer X and Y, but you can offer A, B, and C. Okay, sorry, thanks again. If someone needs flexibility with deadlines or work from home is not always possible with the construction industry, I appreciate that. If you have the authority to give someone flexibility, brilliant. Try to pave the way so the employee can speak to HR or appropriate decision makers. So make sure you're telling the colleague what is expected in this situation. What normally happens in our organization is this. Is this something you're comfortable with? Or if it's not, can you tell me what would help and support you right now? And then you put it back on them, ask them what they would like, how they would like to adjust during this period. So be caring and all, clear-headed, that's fine. Do not, this is a big one, do not offer an opinion unless someone asks. Do not, you're not them. We all look at the world through our own filtered lens. So some of the do's and don'ts for mental health conversations. So encourage professional help if you feel it's needed, not forcing it, that's fine. Offer support, not solutions. Do not try to fix their problems. Check in regularly. Be patient. Mental health struggles take time and healing is not always linear. There's no time frame for healing. Using positive language. So again, and staying away from the toxic positivity. You know, you're not alone. We're here to support you. Look, anything we can do, we're here. So boundaries, respect boundaries, allow them to share at their own pace without pressuring them. It's the last thing a lot of people want to talk about. And I don't mean to be sexist, but especially males, it's the last thing. So sometimes shoulder to shoulder is better, talking to a male who's struggling with their mental health. And what I mean by that is go for a walk, go for a drive, as opposed to face on, because it can be so difficult. Empathy, show empathy, that's fine. So listen actively, be empathetic, ask open questions. So questions that encourage more than one word answer. Think of talking to a teenager. Respect their feelings, even if you don't fully understand or acknowledge their emotions as real and important. So some of the don'ts. Do not minimize someone's feelings. It's really, really not okay to minimize how someone's feeling. They feel how they feel. Nobody can ever fight with you or give out to you for how you feel, because you feel how you feel. Keep the judgment to yourself. I think this is an Irish thing. I don't know. Don't make it about you. You know, I've been through worse, or at least is the worst thing you can say to someone. At least, you know, I show a video in some of my longer courses, and there was a girl, she'd lost a baby. And part of the video is, yeah, well, at least you were able to have your first, like, so you'll be grand kind of thing. And it's just like, oh my God, not appropriate. Some of the don'ts. Don't compare their situation to others, at least. If you do not have time to have a proper conversation with someone, it's a busy time of the day for you, wait until you have time. Make time for them, maybe at the end of the day, take them off site, whatever. It depends on your relationship with them. But do not rush the conversation, because I can promise you one thing, that you will not get the details and information that they might have given you if you've been listening and not rushing them. Don't ignore someone's warning signs. If you think that someone is suicidal, you need to call emergency services, and that's where you can call their next of kin or contact person. Don't offer unsolicited advice. You should do this, you should do that. It's not useful. Do not use toxic positivity. That's fine. Don't diagnose them. Unless you're a mental health professional, do not label or assume their condition. Don't share the story without permission. Respect their privacy and confidentiality. It's not your story. You do not tell it. And don't say, I know how you feel, because you don't, because you're not them, and you don't look at the world through their eyes. Okay, so some of the supports and resources, and the Lighthouse charity supports the construction industry specifically and do amazing work. The Construction Industry Benevolent Fund, I struggle to say that word, is there to support people in the construction industry that are struggling. There's some great information and resources on the Health and Safety Authority, and anyone looking to get a real idea of how safe their climate or culture is. I don't know if you've heard of the Nordic 50 Safety Climate Survey. Really interesting, and it's huge. Kudos globally on it as well. It's huge. Guys, if you're struggling, just remember, look at your hydration, look at your sleep, Eat a balanced diet, 80-20 rule, 20% unhealthy if you want, 80% healthy. Exercise, the greatest gift you can give your body every day, your physical and mental health, is have an elevated heart rate for 15 minutes. Move your body. It can be a 7.5-minute walk from your front door. Time in nature, just get out. If in doubt, get out. Final thought, the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. Albert Einstein. Okay, guys, so I just want to thank you all today. That's the end of my talk. So I know there's a question and answer session now. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat and I will hand you over to Laura. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. Here's Laura. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. We actually do have a question before I thank you, Louise.
No problem.
We've one question in saying initiatives and campaigns around mental health have increased across the construction sector, but how can we tell if they're actually working?
You need to figure out metrics on how they're working. You need to look at engagement. You need to look at, are people turning up to people? Are people given time to turn up? You need to look at your EAPs. You need to look at, the percentage. Obviously, it's completely confidential, but there's a real problem with EAPs in Ireland, employee assistance programs, where companies are like very proudly telling us that there's, 3% uptake with their EAP. And for me, that's actually a warning sign, because if you've got 3% uptake, that means there's a lot of people probably need it, but don't use it. So you have to build trust with people that it's completely confidential. So you have to show them that and advertise to them how confidential it is, that the only metrics, the only information they get is the percentage of people, the numbers of people that use it. They don't get anything else. But it's build in metrics, build in KPIs and metrics on how to measure it within your organization. Uptake of surveys, what level of engagement you're having when you're doing events. Surveys will indicate whether people feel like, if they're being heard, and some of the initiatives are working. Some initiatives don't work. Some initiatives do not work, but it's talking to your people first before you do the initiatives and listening to them, what they want, and get an initiative in, ask them what kind of stuff they want to support their mental health, and then do something along what they're asking for, and then measure the level of engagement and uptake on those initiatives. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, look, I don't see any more questions there at the moment, Louise, but thank you so much. It's been so informative, and thank you everyone for attending today. There will be a CPD certificate sent out next week. We have recorded this session, so we will put it up on our YouTube channel. And if anyone has any other questions, they can come back to us, cpskillnet@cif.ie, or you can look at our website, cpskillnet.ie. And thank you so much to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Thanks. Have a lovely afternoon. Thanks, Laura.
No problem.